single mom escapes in the night with her son. What she did next will leave you speechless. Welcome back and enjoy the story. In the quiet suburbs of a small coastal town, an explosion of rage shattered the silence. The sound of breaking glass sent 35-year-old Faye frantically racing to her son's bedroom. 7-year-old Upton slept peacefully, unaware that this night would forever change their lives. Faye saw the bruises forming on her arms and made a decision that would require every ounce of her courage. She quickly packed essential items, took her sleeping child, and disappeared into the night, leaving behind a life built over 10 years. The cold air hit Faye's face as she hurried down the street, Upton bundled in a blanket and still half asleep in her arms. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a reminder of the danger they were fleeing. She had exactly $87 in her pocket, and her grandmother's locket, the only keepsake from a happier time. Every shadow made her flinch, every distant sound caused her to quicken her pace. The bus station was 3 miles away, but Faye couldn't risk calling a taxi. Someone might remember them, might tell him where they'd gone. "Mummy, where are we going?" Upton mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "On an adventure, sweetheart," Faye whispered, forcing brightness into her voice despite the fear that threatened to choke her. "A special adventure, just you and me." The last bus of the night was scheduled to depart in 20 minutes. A bus that would take them 200 miles away to a city where they knew no one. A city where Faye hoped they could disappear. As they waited on the hard plastic seats of the nearly empty station, Faye held Upton close, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. The small coastal town she had called home for the past decade now represented only danger, not safety. The life she had carefully constructed, the facade of normalcy she had maintained, had shattered like the glass that had triggered their escape. When the bus finally arrived, Faye guided Upton to a seat near the back, away from windows and curious eyes. As the vehicle pulled away from the station, she watched the familiar streets recede, wondering if she would ever see them again, wondering if she wanted to. The bruises on her arms throbbed, physical reminders of what she was leaving behind. For the next 12 months, Faye's journey would test her limits, reveal hidden strengths, and ultimately lead to an unexpected redemption. But in this moment, as the bus carried them into the unknown, all she felt was terror and the overwhelming weight of responsibility for the small boy dozing against her shoulder. The journey lasted through the night, with Upton sleeping fitfully while Faye remained vigilant, unable to close her eyes for more than a few minutes at a time. Dawn was breaking as they arrived in the city, a sprawling urban landscape so different from their small coastal town. Tall buildings reached toward a grey sky, and the morning rush hour had already begun, with streams of people hurrying in all directions, faces obscured by coffee cups and cell phones. Faye had researched the women's shelter before they left, memorizing the address and saving just enough money for a taxi from the bus station. But when they arrived, exhausted and disoriented, a handwritten sign on the door delivered a crushing blow. "No vacancies until next week. For emergencies, please call," followed by a number Faye couldn't afford to call. "Is this where we're staying, Mummy?" Upton asked, his small face pale with fatigue. Faye swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "Not today, sweetie. We need to find somewhere else, but it's still an adventure, right?" They spent their first 3 nights sleeping on a bench in the bus terminal, Faye holding Upton close against the autumn chill, one arm always wrapped protectively around his small body. During the day, they wandered the streets, seeking warmth in public libraries and shopping malls. Faye used a small portion of their precious money to buy food, choosing items that would satisfy Upton's hunger without depleting their reserves too quickly. On the 4th day, desperation drove Faye to a decision she had been avoiding. She twisted her wedding ring, the last valuable possession she owned, from her finger. The gold band that had once symbolized love and commitment now represented only fear and broken promises. The pawnshop owner barely looked at her as he assessed the ring's value, offering enough for a week's stay at a rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. The motel room was small and worn, with water stains on the ceiling and a persistent smell of cleaning chemicals, but to Faye and Upton, it was a sanctuary. That night, as Upton slept in the bed with its threadbare sheets, Faye sat in the room's only chair, watching the door and planning their next steps. They needed more money, a more permanent place to stay, and Upton needed to enroll in school. Most of all, they needed to remain invisible. Morning brought no solutions, only the growing awareness of their precarious situation. After getting Upton dressed and sharing a breakfast of vending machine snacks, Faye decided to explore the neighborhood around the motel. Several blocks away, they discovered a small diner, its neon open sign flickering in the gray morning light. The smell of coffee and bacon drew them inside, where Faye allowed herself to splurge on a proper breakfast for Upton. "You're new around here," observed the waitress, a woman in her 70s with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her name tag read, Nancy. "Just passing through," Faye replied cautiously, avoiding eye contact. Nancy refilled her coffee cup without being asked. "Passing through usually means you're headed somewhere. You look more like you're running from somewhere." When Faye stiffened, the older woman added gently, "None of my business, of course. But if you're looking for work, I heard the manager saying the dishwasher quit yesterday." Faye looked up, hope flickering for the first time in days. "Do you think they'd hire me?" "Worth asking," Nancy shrugged. "Office is through that door." The manager, a harried man with food stains on his white shirt, barely glanced at the application Faye filled out. Her hands trembled so badly that she accidentally knocked over a coffee mug while reaching for a pen. The ceramic shattered on the floor, and Faye froze, bracing herself for the anger that would surely follow. Instead, Nancy appeared with a broom and dustpan. "Don't worry about it, honey. When can you start?" "Start?" Faye repeated, confused. "The dishwashing job," Nancy clarified. "Lou here doesn't have time to interview people properly, but I've been working here 20 years, and I'm a good judge of character. You need the job, and we need a dishwasher. Simple as that." And so the kitchen became Faye's sanctuary, though her hands cracked and bled from the harsh soap and hot water. The work was grueling, but the kitchen's heat and constant activity kept her mind occupied, preventing it from dwelling on the fear that still lurked at the edges of her consciousness. Each night she returned to their motel room with dinner leftovers wrapped in napkins, and Upton's delighted smile at these simple offerings made the exhaustion worthwhile. With her first paycheck, Faye enrolled Upton in the local elementary school, carefully filling out the paperwork to avoid revealing too much information. She explained that they had recently relocated and were staying with a relative temporarily, a story close enough to the truth to be believable, but vague enough to protect them. The school administrator, accustomed to transient families, asked few questions, but Upton struggled to adjust to their new life. The bright, talkative boy, who had once charmed everyone he met, became withdrawn, speaking little even to Faye. His first week at the new school passed in a blur of tearful mornings and silent evenings. When his teacher called Faye, concerned, about drawings Upton had made, dark figures chasing a woman and child, Faye realized her son carried invisible wounds deeper than she had imagined. That night, after Upton had fallen asleep, Faye allowed herself a moment of doubt. Had she done the right thing? Would this new life, fraught with uncertainty and hardship, be better than the one they had left? The bruises on her arms had faded, but the memory of that final night, the shattered glass, the terrifying rage, remained vivid. No, she had made the right choice. They were safer here, despite everything. She just needed to find a way to help Upton understand that. To help him heal. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. A thunderstorm struck the city the following week, lightning illuminating the motel room in harsh flashes, thunder rattling the thin windows. When Faye returned from the bathroom, she found Upton's bed empty. Panic seized her until she spotted the closet door slightly ajar. Inside, curled in the corner with his favorite toy soldier clutched to his chest, Upton trembled with each thunderclap. "Oh, sweetheart," Faye whispered, crouching beside him. "I thought he found us," Upton whispered, his voice small and frightened. "I thought he was coming to take us back." Faye gathered him in her arms, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her chest. "He won't find us," she promised, hoping it was true. "We're safe here, Upton. I won't let anything happen to you." But as Upton clung to her, Faye understood that their escape was only the beginning of their healing. The fear had followed them, embedding itself in their new life like a shadow. Freedom from physical danger did not mean freedom from the emotional scars they both carried. That night, they slept together in Faye's bed, Upton finally relaxing into true sleep only as dawn approached. The following day, between shifts at the diner, Faye began searching for more permanent housing. Their week at the motel was nearly over, and though she had earned enough for another week, Faye knew they needed stability, a real home where Upton could begin to feel secure. The local newspaper listed apartments for rent, most well beyond Faye's means, but a few possibilities emerged. A studio apartment above a laundromat, a converted garage behind an elderly couple's home. She was about to call the number for the studio when Nancy appeared at her side during her break, expression grim. "Someone was asking about you today," the older woman said quietly. "Man in a suit, showed some kind of official ID, said something about a missing child case." The world seemed to tilt beneath Faye's feet. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing useful," Nancy replied. "But Faye, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble?" The concern in Nancy's eyes warred with the instinct for secrecy that had guided Faye since their escape. But she needed allies, and Nancy had shown her nothing but kindness. Taking a deep breath, Faye explained, not everything, but enough: the abusive husband, the fear for her son, the desperate flight. "He's reported me for taking Upton," Faye concluded, her voice hollow. "And he's frozen our joint bank account. I checked this morning. My ATM card was declined when I tried to withdraw my paycheck." To Faye's surprise, instead of judgment or pity, Nancy's expression hardened with resolution. "Well, he won't find you here," she declared. "If anyone else comes asking, you're my niece visiting for family reasons. Been here 6 months already." That night, Nancy invited them to stay temporarily in her guest room above a bustling neighborhood bakery, where the scent of cinnamon and fresh bread offered a moment of normalcy. The room was small but clean, with faded floral wallpaper and a window overlooking a narrow alley. For the first time since their escape, Faye slept deeply, the knowledge of Nancy's protection allowing her to truly rest. Weeks passed, and Faye settled into a routine. She worked long hours at the diner, saved every penny possible, and devoted her evenings to Upton, helping with homework and trying to create small moments of joy in their circumscribed life. The constant vigilance began to ease, though Faye still startled at unexpected noises and scrutinized strangers' faces for any hint of recognition. One slow afternoon at the diner, the cook called in sick, leaving the kitchen short-staffed during the dinner rush. Faye, observing the mounting chaos from her station at the industrial sink, hesitantly approached the manager. "I could help," she offered. "With the cooking, I mean. My grandmother taught me. I used to prepare meals for..." She faltered, unwilling to mention her former life. The manager, desperate and out of options, gestured toward the stove. "Show me what you can do." Faye's cooking skills, once only appreciated by her son, caught the attention of the entire staff when she improvised a meal from nearly expired ingredients. Her Mediterranean seafood stew, a recipe from her immigrant grandmother, filled the diner with aromas of garlic, herbs, and the sea. The regular customers, initially skeptical of the unfamiliar dish, returned their empty bowls with requests for the recipe. "Where did you learn to cook like that?" Nancy asked later as they closed the diner. Faye smiled, a genuine expression that felt foreign on her face after so many weeks of worry. "My grandmother was from a small fishing village in Greece. She believed food should tell a story. Her stews were like history in a bowl." As winter approached, bringing bitter winds and early darkness, Faye received a small promotion from dishwasher to prep cook. The additional income allowed her to enroll Upton in after-school art therapy, recommended by his teacher as a way to help him process his emotions. Slowly, tentatively, Upton began to emerge from his shell. His drawings, once dominated by shadowy figures and dark colors, gradually incorporated brighter elements: a sun peeking through clouds, a boat on calm waters. December brought the city's annual Winter Harbor Festival, a celebration of the town's fishing heritage despite the snow that blanketed the docks. The diner participated with a booth featuring hot drinks and hearty seafood dishes. Faye's special recipes, her grandmother's spiced fish soup, herb-crusted cod, and seafood paella, drew unexpected crowds. A local food blogger photographed her creations, capturing Faye's hands as she garnished a bowl of soup with fresh herbs. The blog post went viral in the small city's social media circles, praising the mysterious new chef at Harbor Diner and her soul-warming Mediterranean-inspired seafood. For the first time since their escape, Faye felt a glimmer of pride in her new identity, not as a victim fleeing danger, but as a creator of something valued and appreciated. This spark of hope was quickly dampened when, 3 days later, Faye spotted a familiar car circling Upton's school during afternoon pickup. The black sedan with tinted windows could have belonged to anyone, but the distinctive dent in the rear panel sent ice through Faye's veins. It was her brother-in-law's car, the same one he had loaned to her husband on numerous occasions. Panicked, Faye pulled Upton from class early, making up an excuse about a doctor's appointment. They hid at Nancy's apartment for 3 days, Faye calling in sick to work and keeping Upton home from school. The fear of being found became overwhelming, nearly convincing Faye to flee again, to abandon the tentative routes they had begun to establish and disappear to another city, another state. "But, Mommy, I don't want to leave," Upton protested tearfully when Faye began packing their few belongings. "I made friends here. Miss Garcia says my art is getting better. Please don't make me go away again." The desperation in her son's voice stopped Faye in her tracks. They had already sacrificed so much. How could she ask Upton to give up the small sense of stability he had finally found? There had to be another way, a way to stand their ground instead of running. With Nancy's encouragement, Faye sought legal help at a community center that offered services to women in situations like hers. The waiting room was crowded with others seeking assistance, their faces reflecting various degrees of the same fear and determination Faye felt. When her turn finally came, Faye entered the small office prepared to beg, if necessary, for protection, for advice, for any sliver of hope. The lawyer who greeted her, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened to Faye's story without interruption. When Faye finished, the lawyer leaned forward. "First, you should know that you're not alone in this. Second, there's something you should see." She turned her computer screen toward Faye, revealing a news article from their hometown. The headline made Faye's heart skip. local businessman under investigation for fraud and tax evasion. The accompanying photo showed her husband being escorted from his office by federal agents. Your husband's excessive credit card debt and questionable business dealings have made him the subject of a major investigation, the lawyer explained. This actually gives you some unexpected leverage. He'll be too preoccupied with his own legal troubles to pursue you effectively, and it might make negotiating custody arrangements more straightforward should you decide to pursue that route. The information provided Faye with unexpected leverage, but also brought the shame of realizing how much of her former life had been built on illusions. The comfortable home, the expensive vacations, the seemingly successful business, all of it tainted by dishonesty. Had she truly been so blind, or had she simply chosen not to see? "What should I do?" Faye asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Document everything," the lawyer advised. "The abuse, the threats, any communication, from him or his family. Apply for a restraining order and consider whether you want to file for divorce and formal custody. With his current legal troubles, you're in a stronger position than you might think." Faye left the community center with a folder of information and a glimmer of possibility she hadn't dared hope for. A future where they could stop running, where they could build something real and lasting without constantly looking over their shoulders. That evening, the hotel room transformed as she told Upton a modified version of the news, that they might be able to stay, that they were working to make sure they remained safe. As Upton's face brightened with relief, a powerful narrative question emerged in Faye's mind. After months of surviving, could they finally begin living? Winter yielded to spring, bringing warmer air and renewed activity to the harbor. Faye had saved enough to rent a small apartment above a local fishmonger. The constant scent of the sea reminded her of childhood summers at her grandmother's coastal village. The space was modest, one bedroom, which she gave to Upton while she slept on a fold-out couch in the living area, but it was theirs, secured with Faye's name on a 12-month lease. A home, not a hiding place. She continued to work at the diner, gradually incorporating more of her traditional recipes into the menu. The manager, impressed by the increased business her cooking attracted, gave her more freedom in the kitchen. Regular customers now asked for Faye's special instead of ordering from the menu, trusting her to create something delicious from the day's freshest ingredients. Upton School held a spring festival where children created paper lanterns to float in the harbor, an old tradition meant to guide fishing boats safely home. Faye watched from the shore as Upton joined the other children in carefully placing their lanterns in the water, his face alight with joy as his creation bobbed gently on the waves. His nightmares had decreased, though he still slept with his bedroom door open, needing the reassurance of knowing Faye was nearby. "Mom, can we stay here forever?" Upton asked as they walked home that evening, his small hand warm in hers. Faye squeezed his fingers gently. "I hope so, sweetheart. I'm doing everything I can to make that happen." And she was. The restraining order had been granted. The divorce papers had been filed. The lawyer from the community center had contacted. Her husband's attorney and preliminary discussions about a settlement had begun. His legal troubles made him more amenable to negotiation than Faye had dared hope. There was a long road ahead, but for the first time, Faye allowed herself to believe they might reach the end of it intact. Faye's cooking talents caught the attention of Olivia, an elderly restaurant owner famous for her traditional seafood dishes. The woman, well into her 70s, had been a fixture in the harbor community for decades. Her restaurant, Sea Breeze, occupied a weathered blue building at the edge of the wharf, with windows overlooking the fishing boats and the open ocean beyond. When Olivia's arthritis prevented her from working full shifts, she offered Faye a position with more responsibility and better pay. My hands aren't what they used to be, Olivia explained when she visited the diner to try Faye's cooking. But yours still have many years of good work in them. And you understand something important about food, that it's not just sustenance, but story. Faye hesitated, afraid to step into the spotlight. The diner's kitchen had provided anonymity along with employment. Seabreeze would put her in a more visible position, but Nancy encouraged her to embrace the opportunity. You can't hide forever, her friend pointed out. And you're wasted in that diner kitchen. This is your chance to build something real. After much deliberation, Faye accepted Olivia's offer. Seabreeze's menu featured classic New England seafood dishes alongside Mediterranean influences, a perfect canvas for Faye's culinary heritage. The restaurant's regular patrons, initially skeptical of the new chef, quickly warmed to Faye's creative interpretations of traditional favorites. Her seafood stew became so popular that Olivia added it as a permanent menu item, naming it Faye's Mediterranean Harbor. During a particularly busy dinner service, the hostess called Faye from the kitchen to meet a customer who wanted to compliment the chef. Faye wiped her hands on her apron, uncomfortable with the attention but unwilling to be rude. Her blood ran cold when she recognized the customer as Valerie, her sister-in-law, who had been searching for them. Instead of the confrontation Faye feared, Valerie rose from her seat and embraced her. "Thank God," she whispered. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Have you ever known someone who had to start their life completely over? What obstacles do you think are the hardest to overcome when beginning again? Let me know in the comments. They met the following day at a neutral location, a coffee shop on the opposite side of town from Faye's apartment. Upton was at school, safely unaware of the visitor from their past life. Faye arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of both exits, her body tense and ready to flee if necessary. Valerie arrived precisely on time, looking both familiar and strange. The designer clothes and perfect makeup that had been her uniform in their previous life were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. She seemed smaller somehow, less polished, but more authentic. "I left him too," Valerie said, without a preamble, sliding into the seat across from Faye. "William, I mean. 3 months after you disappeared. It took me longer to see what was happening, or maybe I just didn't want to see it." She pushed up her sleeve, revealing faded bruises similar to those Faye had fled with. Family tradition, apparently. Faye's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "How did you find me?" "That blog post about the Harbor Diner. Someone from home shared it on social media. They didn't recognize you, but I did. I would know your hands anywhere, the way you garnish with those herbs arranged just so." Valerie's smile was sad. "I've been in the city for 2 weeks, working up the courage to approach you. I was afraid you'd run again." "I still might," Faye admitted. "Please don't." Valerie reached into her bag and withdrew a manila envelope. "I brought these for you. Legal documents. After you left, things fell apart quickly. The business was already in trouble. The fraud investigation just accelerated it. And then there were the domestic violence charges from the incident with his secretary." "His secretary?" Faye repeated, confused. "Apparently you weren't the only one he hurt. But she pressed charges." Valerie slid the envelope across the table. "These are copies of the restraining orders, the bankruptcy filing, and most importantly this. He's relinquished all claims to custody in exchange for the DA dropping certain charges. He's facing prison time, Faye. He can't hurt you or Upton anymore." Faye stared at the documents, unable to fully process what they meant. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I should have helped you sooner. Because what they did to both of us was wrong. Because maybe by helping you, I'm helping myself too." Valerie's eyes filled with tears. "We're not the women we were a year ago, Faye. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing." For the first time in a year, Faye slept without fear. The documents Valerie had provided were legitimate. Her lawyer confirmed it the next day. The legal barriers to their new life had been lifted, though the emotional ones would take longer to dismantle. But with each passing day, with each small victory and moment of joy, Faye felt herself growing stronger, more confident in her ability to create the future they deserved. As summer arrived, Olivia announced her retirement and offered Faye the chance to take over Seabreeze with a partner arrangement. "I've been running this place for 40 years, Olivia explained. "It's time to enjoy what's left of these old bones. But I don't want to sell to some corporation that would change everything. You understand the soul of this place, the connection to the community and the sea. I'll provide the financing if you'll provide the heart and hands to keep it going." The offer was more generous than Faye could have imagined. A chance not just at employment, but at ownership, at creating something lasting that could support her and Upton for years to come. The local fishing community, who had come to appreciate Faye's respect for their traditions and ingredients, offered wholesale prices on their daily catches. Nancy volunteered to help with Upton after school, creating a chosen family neither Faye nor Upton expected. Valerie, who had relocated permanently to the city, became a regular presence in their lives. Initially cautious around her, Upton gradually warmed to his aunt, especially when she revealed a talent for building elaborate sandcastles during their beach outings. "She makes them look like real castles, Mom," he explained, his eyes wide with admiration. "With towers and bridges and everything." The summer passed in a blur of activity as Faye worked with Olivia to learn the business side of running Seabreeze. There were permits to understand, vendor relationships to maintain, staff to manage, 1,000 details beyond the cooking that Faye had never considered. But Olivia was a patient teacher, and Faye discovered an aptitude for organization and planning that served her well in her new role. "You're a natural," Olivia observed one evening as they reviewed the monthly accounts. "You see the patterns in the numbers, just like you see the patterns in flavors. Not everyone can do that." The completion of their legal separation came in August, delivered in a thick envelope of court documents that formally ended Faye's marriage and granted her full custody of Upton. The news didn't bring the flood of emotion Faye had expected, neither grief nor triumph, but a quiet sense of completion, of a door firmly closed. What will happen when Faye finally takes full ownership of the restaurant? Will her past continue to haunt them, or will this new chapter truly be a fresh start? The answers await as our story continues. On the anniversary of their escape, Faye took Upton to the harbour at sunset. The water glowed golden in the fading light, fishing boats returning from a day at sea, their nets empty, their work done. Faye gave Upton her grandmother's locket, now containing a tiny photo of the two, of them at the fishing festival. "This is very old," she explained as she fastened the chain around his neck. "It belonged to my grandmother and her mother before that. It's a reminder that we come from people who crossed oceans and started new lives. People who were brave, just like you." Upton touched the locket reverently. "Did they run away too? They left behind things that weren't good for them, to find something better," Faye said carefully. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave, and sometimes the bravest thing is to stay and build something new." As paper lanterns from another harbour celebration illuminated the darkening water, Faye realized they were no longer running from their past. They were sailing toward their future. The fear that had driven them from their home had transformed into the courage that allowed them to create a new one. The skills Faye had once used to survive, vigilance, adaptability, determination, now served her in thriving. 2 weeks later, Seabreeze reopened under Faye's management, featuring a menu that honored local traditions while incorporating her grandmother's Mediterranean influence. The name remained the same, a tribute to Olivia's legacy, but subtle. Changes reflected Faye's vision. The walls, once decorated with generic nautical prints, now displayed photographs of local fishing families alongside images of Greek coastal villages. Each table featured a small vase with wildflowers that Upton collected every morning, symbols of beauty that could grow even in difficult places. Opening night was a triumph. The restaurant filled with familiar faces. Nancy and her husband at the best table by the window. Valerie, now working at the Community Legal Center, accompanied by colleagues. Olivia, officially retired but unable to stay away, greeting old customers like long-lost friends. The local newspaper sent a reporter who praised the seamless transition that honors tradition while embracing fresh perspectives. In the kitchen, Faye moved with confidence, directing her small staff with clear instructions and occasional demonstrations. The recipes she had inherited from her grandmother, once made in a home kitchen with limited ingredients, now flourished with the bounty of the local waters. She had expanded the menu, adding dishes that told the story of her own journey, a fusion of heritage and new beginnings. During a lull in service, Faye stepped out of the kitchen to observe the dining room. Customers lingered over meals, conversation and laughter filling the space. Through the windows, the harbor lights reflected on the water, creating shimmering pathways across the dark surface. It was beautiful in a way she had never appreciated during those first desperate days in the city, when all she could see was danger and uncertainty. Upton, dressed in a miniature chef's jacket Olivia had given him as a gift, proudly showed customers to their tables. His nightmares had ceased almost entirely, and though he sometimes asked questions about their old life, he did so with curiosity rather than fear. The therapy sessions continued, but now focused more on processing the past than managing present trauma. "Mom, can I learn to cook like you?" Upton had asked recently. "Ms. Garcia says I'm good at art, but I want to be good at cooking too." "Of course," Faye had replied, touched by his desire to share her passion. "We'll start with simple things and work our way up, just like my grandmother taught me." They had begun with basic skills, measuring ingredients, stirring without splashing, the importance of timing. Upton proved an enthusiastic if messy apprentice, his concentration absolute when learning new techniques. Faye treasured these moments, seeing in them not just the transmission of recipes, but the healing of wounds, the building of a future neither of them could have imagined a year earlier. As the final customers departed and the staff began closing procedures, Faye retreated to her small office at the back of the restaurant. The desk, actually a repurposed kitchen table, was covered with invoices, employee schedules, and menu drafts. A framed photograph stood beside the computer. Upton at the Spring Festival, his paper lantern just touching the water, his face alight with hope. Nancy appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She had insisted on helping with the reopening, claiming retirement was boring as watching paint dry, and that she needed something to fill her evenings. In reality, Faye knew Nancy wanted to be part of this milestone, to witness the culmination of the journey she had helped make possible. "Quite a night," Nancy observed, settling into the chair opposite Faye. "Olivia looked pleased. Said you did the place proud." "I couldn't have done any of this without you," Faye said quietly. "That first day at the diner, if you hadn't been there." Nancy waved away the sentiment. "You would have found another way. That's what I've learned about you, Faye. You always find a way." Later, after Nancy had gone home and Upton had fallen, asleep on the small cot Faye kept in her office for late nights, she stood at the restaurant's front window, gazing out at the harbor. The water was black now, the celebration lanterns long extinguished, but Faye could still picture them. Small, lights guiding the way forward, illuminating not just the path, but the possibility of reaching the destination. Her path from terrified escape to this moment of triumph wasn't direct or easy. It was a winding journey marked by kindness from strangers who became family, courage discovered in moments of greatest fear, and strength built through countless, small acts of perseverance. As she prepared to lock the restaurant for the night, Faye's eyes reflected not just what she had overcome, but what she had built from the broken pieces of her former life. 1 year ago, she had fled into the night with nothing but a sleeping child, $87, and her grandmother's locket. Now she stood amid the evidence of all she had created since then: a thriving business, a safe home, a support network of friends who had become family. The journey had been difficult, marked by fear and uncertainty, but also by unexpected kindness and opportunities that arose when she found the courage to accept them. The restaurant reopens under Faye's management, featuring a menu that honors local traditions while incorporating her grandmother's Mediterranean influence. The name New Horizon represents not just Faye's journey, but also serves as a beacon for others seeking fresh starts. Each table features a small vase with wildflowers that Upton collects every morning, symbols of beauty that can grow even in difficult places. Faye stands at the restaurant entrance on opening night, watching her son proudly show customers to their tables. Her path from terrified escape to this moment of triumph wasn't direct or easy. It was a winding journey marked by kindness from strangers who became family, courage discovered in moments of greatest fear, and strength built through countless small acts of perseverance. As she welcomes guests into her new establishment, Faye's eyes reflect not just what she overcame, but what she built from the broken pieces of her former life. The following morning, Faye and Upton walk along the harbour before the restaurant opens for lunch service. The fishing boats are already returning with their early catches, and several fishermen wave in recognition. Ms. Olivia says, "I can go out on Uncle Pete's boat next weekend if it's okay with you," Upton tells her, skipping alongside as they walk. "He's going to show me how to use the nets." "That sounds wonderful," Faye replies, marveling at how quickly Upton has embraced their new community. A year ago, he had been a frightened child, hiding in closets during thunderstorms. Now he runs toward new experiences with enthusiasm, secure in the knowledge that his world is safe, that the people in it can be trusted. It's the greatest gift of their new life, not just physical safety or financial security, but this emotional restoration, this reclaiming of joy and trust. As they return to the restaurant, Faye pauses to look at the sign she had hung just days earlier. New Horizon glints in the morning sun, the blue lettering matching the color of the ocean beyond. It's more than a restaurant name. It's a promise to herself and to Upton, a declaration that what lies ahead matters more than what they left behind. Inside, Nancy is already preparing for the lunch service, arranging fresh flowers in the small vases that adorn each table. "Today's delivery just arrived," she calls as Faye enters. "Some beautiful scallops and that wild salmon you like." Faye smiles, moving toward the kitchen where her day's work awaits. This is her domain now, not a place where she hides, but where she creates, where she transforms raw ingredients into dishes that tell stories of heritage and hope. The fear that once defined her has been replaced by purpose, by the quiet confidence that comes from building something meaningful. Later that afternoon, as the lunch crowd thins, a woman enters the restaurant alone. She's well-dressed but uncertain, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for something familiar. Faye recognizes the look. It's one she wore herself not so long ago. "Welcome to New Horizon," Faye greets her. "Table for one?" The woman nods, following Faye to a quiet corner by the window. As Faye hands her a menu, she notices the fading bruise on the woman's wrist, poorly concealed by a bracelet, and the way she flinches when a plate crashes in the kitchen. "Our seafood stew is excellent today," Faye says gently. "My grandmother's recipe." She always said it was food for difficult journeys, something to strengthen you when the road ahead seems long. The woman looks up, something like recognition flickering in her eyes. "That sounds perfect," she whispers. As Faye returns to the kitchen to prepare the dish, she thinks about cycles broken and new patterns established, about strength found in unexpected places, about the way pain, when transformed through courage and compassion, can become something beautiful and nourishing. She adds an extra portion of the stew to the order, wrapping it carefully for the woman to take with her. A small gesture, but Faye knows how much small gestures can matter when you're rebuilding a life from scattered pieces. Through the kitchen window, she watches Upton chatting animatedly with regular customers, moving confidently through the dining room with water refills and bread baskets. His laughter reaches her bright and unrestrained. This is their victory, not just survival, but renewal, not just escape, but creation. The life they've built isn't perfect, but it's real and it's theirs, shaped by their own choices rather than by fear. As the sun begins to set, casting golden light across the harbour waters, Faye steps outside for a moment of quiet reflection. A year's journey stretches behind her, marked by difficult days and small triumphs. Ahead lies a future she's still creating day by day, choice by choice. The locket that once held her grandmother's picture now rests around Upton's neck, a link between
her skin and feels, says, but fulfillment, knowledge that its purpose has been served, its protection.
She thinks of all the women who came before her, who crossed oceans and endured hardships to create better lives for those who would follow. Her grandmother, who brought recipes and stories from a distant shore. Her mother, who worked 2 jobs to provide opportunities she herself never had. And now Faye, adding her own chapter to this legacy of resilience. The dinner rush will begin soon. There are dishes to prepare, customers to welcome, a business to nurture. But for this moment, Faye allows herself to simply be still, to acknowledge how far they've come, from a bus station bench to a restaurant by the sea, from $87 to financial independence, from isolation to community, from fear to hope. The journey continues, but now they move forward not as fugitives but as creators, shaping their own story with each passing day. And if shadows from the past occasionally fall across their path, they're met not with terror, but with the steady determination of those who have learned their own strength. Faye returns to the kitchen, where Upton waits with eagerness to learn the next cooking lesson she's promised him. His hands are already washed, an apron tied around his waist. His eyes, so like her own, shine with anticipation and trust. "Ready to begin?" she asks. His smile is answer enough. "Congratulations. Type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.